Do you feel that John Brennan is a threat to the United States?
Yeah, that's an unfair question. More than Roberts?
Well, he's being blackmailed.
You know, I listen to what these people say, and it gets back on how they're brainwashed when they get to Washington. I don't know what they have. It's like, and I've said this, Dee and I talked about it. What are they holding over these people's heads to make them say some of these things and do some of these things and vote the way they vote? They've got to know right from wrong. I don't care whether they're Democrat or Republican. Some of the way they vote. But I'll tell you who I blame more, and please don't take this the wrong way, because you're sitting out here tells me you are not these individuals. I blame the American public, because it's the Americans that have allowed people like Nancy Pelosi to say, we need to pass it before we know what's in it.
Exactly.
Woo! And she keeps getting elected?
Yeah.
But you also have, because I went to college in Maryland, you have law professors that tell you
Yes.
you can become an intern and read the documents, because that he blatantly come right out and said, nobody ever reads the laws. What they have is they have a committee of interns. 5 or 6 kids will read the laws, and they will highlight it and tell him what's in it, and then he votes on it according to what the kids tell him.
And I know that when it comes to the senators and the congressmen and congresswomen that are up there, if you look at how many different bills they pass just in a day, they can't possibly read it all. But I would think, I know if I had been up there, and please don't take that the wrong way because I have no intentions of getting into politics, if I had been up there and there was something as big as Obamacare sitting on my desk, I would have made sure that everything else got set aside for a couple of days. Since they only were giving a couple of days to read it, I would have known what was in it before I made a decision and voted on it. I mean, these are just common sense things, but when it comes to national security, I really wonder, how many people here like Bill Cosby? And the things that Bill Cosby says about, you know, African Americans versus whites and the way you should raise your kids. Did anybody see the op-ed in New York Post yesterday from Bill Cosby? We need to emulate and be more like the Muslims. I met Bill Cosby. This was long before I was doing this stuff. I met him. He was a great guy, funny guy. And I still can't believe that that came out of his mouth. Did you see what Colonel West said in response to him? You know, and this is the problem, because you have people like Bill Cosby. We've become a nation where our heroes and the people that our kids emulate and look up to are Hollywood stars.
That's right. Exactly.
What happened to people like Colonel Allen West? I would rather my child have a poster of Allen West on his wall than of Angelina Jolie.
That's right.
I mean, there's a difference here of, you know, great, so you make great movies and you're pretty and you can sing and you can dance and whatever. That doesn't mean you know what in the heck you're talking about when it comes to politics.
That's right.
You know, talk to the guy that was a colonel in the Army all those years. I mean, it just boggles my mind where we have become as a country. And one of the things that I was lucky enough to have happen was I was born here and raised by American parents. I know what it is to be an American. When I came back from Israel, I joined the U.S. Navy. I didn't know any better. I wanted to, you know, I had short hair and I just wanted that camaraderie again. And unfortunately, that was under the Reagan era, and it was just starting to be built up, and that was a whole mess. But they taught us how to march in a straight line. I said, when are we getting guns? They said, you don't get a gun, this is the Navy. It didn't last long. But somewhere along the line, and you know, we've talked about this on my show. I have a rabbi on my show once a week who's a Hasidic rabbi. That would be an ultra-Orthodox rabbi. Wonderful, wonderful man with fantastic insight, because he just became a rabbi in his late 50s. And his whole life he was a Reform Jew. And he'll tell you, I used to be Reformed, but I got better. And this man went from being a regular, really not even going to synagogue Jew to an ultra-Orthodox Jew, worked and lived his whole life as a regular individual, and he's just got, he worked for the government, so he has a lot of mindset on different national security issues. We spoke at length one night on my show about where has America changed. And if you go back to the 60s, to Vietnam, or the late 50s, that's where you started to see the change. And now we're seeing the seeds of that were planted then. Like Jenny just said, look at your professors in college.
Right.
These are those 60s liberal hippies.
Yeah.
And that's what's teaching our kids.
That's right.
So I think that's where the problem is. As far as John Brennan, did I totally get off that subject?
You did. I understand.
There are very few people in Washington that I like or agree with. Very few. Maybe I can count one. Yeah, so I'm still trying to figure out Supreme Court Justice Roberts and his decision with Obamacare. So I don't know what is going on up there. Some of the things that I do know that I can't even talk about keep me up at night. We'll just put it that way when it comes to national security. We are living in a frightening time, but it is still we the people. And there are still enough people in this United States that we could bring it back to the way it was meant to be, which is that they work for us and not the other way around, if we make enough noise. But sitting in this room, we're not enough. If every one of us sitting in here, especially the youngsters, go out and start spreading that, just one person each, we've just doubled in size. It's all a numbers game. And that's the only way we're going to defeat this. Or I swear to you, within 25 years, we'll be living darn near under Islamic law. And don't be surprised when you see the black flag of Al-Qaeda flying over the White House. That is not an exaggeration. And it's no crazier than if I had stood here and said, they're going to attack us and bring down our towers.
That's right.
Think about where we were 13 years ago and what this country was like if I had made a comment like that. Because they've called me crazy since I came to the States in 1981. When I applied for law enforcement and I wanted to get into anti-terror, I was laughed at, literally. Laughed at across the table from an FBI agent. This is America, we don't have terrorism? That was his answer to me. I said, wait 10 years and remember the word jihad. I was off by 2 years because of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. That was off the cuff, off the top of my head. I knew that what I had seen in Israel was coming to this country. The ocean doesn't keep it out of here.
That's right.
And we have to do something about it or we're going to lose the country. And the only reason I do this is for my own children, my child, my daughter. I mean, I'd much rather be sitting at home watching TV or reading a book. Or chasing my dog. But if you worry about your kids and your grandkids, this is what we need to get people to understand.
But you also have to teach your kids and your grandkids. It's not enough.
Absolutely.
They're teaching their children how to
Oh,
make
yes,
us.
they are.
So we have to teach ours what to look for and how the United States is supposed to be.
Absolutely.
Because they're already changing the history book.
Throughout the world, and we can exclude America in this because a lot of the Muslims in the United States go to public schools. Throughout the world, 80% of your Muslims are illiterate. But they can recite this word for word. Because this is all they learn from the time they begin to speak. That is why when you see them praying and their mouth is moving, you never see a book in front of them. Okay, now I'm not talking about the U.S. or those that are living in foreign countries where they've gone to public schools and learned a language. But 80% of the Muslims in Islamic, in the Middle East, are totally illiterate. But they know this heart and soul.